OSH. I'm the operations officer here at Kelowna Detachment. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to provide an update on two outstanding Kelowna RCMP criminal investigations in which charges have now been laid. The first investigation relates to an event that was captured on video on July 13th, 2021, outside a COVID-19 vaccine clinic on Springfield Road, where protesters were present. A video which has been seen in the public depicts a man in what can be best described as berating a security officer based on his ethnicity while he was providing security at the clinic. The video launched a hate crime investigation into the comments and actions of this person. Investigators from our General Investigative Support Team sought assistance and guidance with our Provincial Hate Crimes Unit and completed their investigation, submitted it with the disclosure for review of the case by the BC Prosecution Services. On April 7th of this year, the BC Prosecution Service approved a criminal charge of causing a disturbance against 16-year-old Bruce Ordzik from Kelowna. He is set to appear in Kelowna Provincial Court on May 26th of this year in relation to this charge. The second event occurred this past Remembrance Day here in Kelowna. Much of this occurrence was also captured on video, in which anti-vaccine protesters are observed coming to a podium, and taking over the service. When I observed these recordings, I believed what I had witnessed went beyond the scope of a peaceful protest and ordered an investigation. As I stated back in November, I believe the public expected us to investigate these actions. As we have all seen and discussed in the past many months, a person or group has the fundamental right to protest. The Kelowna RCMP support this right and will assist in the maintaining of public safety within the confines of the law. However, this right is not absolute. Our General Investigative Support Team also led this investigation. Upon completion, the investigators submitted their case to the BC Prosecution Services, and on April 12th of this year, they approved a criminal charge of disturbing certain meetings, which is contrary to Section 176, Sub 2 of the Criminal Code, against 56-year-old Linda Jackson from Kelowna. She is scheduled to appear in Kelowna Provincial Court on May 19th of this year. The allegations to these two events I've just detailed have not been proven in court. However, it is important for the Kelowna RCMP to convey to the community and city of Kelowna there is no tolerance for hate. And everyone is allowed to protest. Everyone is allowed to have their own opinion. But when your actions and opinions cross a line and a criminal investigation is warranted, we will investigate. The Kelowna RCMP have committed from the onset to complete thorough investigations into these two separate incidents, and to the best of our abilities, we have done that very thing. I want to personally thank the hard work, skill, and dedication of our investigators from the General Investigative Support Team for bringing these cases before the BC Prosecution Services and the courts. I'll now take any questions.
Why, if this was being investigated as a hate crime, is it not defined as a hate crime, or is it an actual listing in the criminal code, or is it just something that you do for charging for sentencing as a security factor? Is there actually a hate crime?
Absolutely. I don't know the section off the top of my head, but there is a crime in the criminal code that relates to hate speech. And there can be components of another offense that could have an element related to hate or racism or these types of events, or context as to the actions of the individual or the motive. However, the elements of the offense of hate speech are certainly higher than causing a disturbance and so forth. And although a person can say something that would be offensive or reprehensible, doesn't necessarily constitute the rise to where it would be a charge. The BC prosecution reviews the case and independently decides on what's the most appropriate charge based on the evidence. In this case, they decided it was causing a disturbance.
Police recommended a charge of under the hate crime legislation, and the Crown said no, it's more like a disturbance?
I would ask you to speak with the BC Prosecution Services as to what evaluation they made with respect to what would be the appropriate charge. We did forward what we had gleaned through that investigation and provided them the opportunity to make the decision, which they do in all cases.
Are you able to speak to the fact that both these incidents were several months ago? What is the process like, and why does it take a certain amount of time for these charges to come through?
That's a difficult answer because every investigation has its own nuances as to why something may take longer. Certainly, if you were to look on the spectrum of the seriousness of offenses, to use the term, these are summary conviction offenses. They're on the lesser scale. And so as a result, we want to make sure we have a complete investigation. There was no risk to the public in the sense that we were concerned a person was going to go out and commit another cause of disturbance, to use the term, or another offense such as that. And so we made sure that our investigation was complete. And then the Crown, well, they choose it based on their own priorities. We unfortunately have a lot of other serious files that occur here in the city of Kelowna and elsewhere that the BC prosecutions in this area deal with, and they prioritize that. So those are factors.
What would you say to people who are concerned that no hate-related charges were laid in relation to the incident at the vaccine clinic?
Well, I think like anything, as any individual saw that, it was difficult to watch, given the circumstances and the things that were being said. But we do live in a free country where people can offer their opinions and thoughts, and we do have legislation around that. But it doesn't mean that something offensive is automatically hate speech. And I would ask you to speak to the BC Prosecution Services with respect to what criteria they may feel would deem to be appropriate hate speech, but I can't speak more specifically other than we present the evidence of the event and they make the decision on what charge to lay, and they did so in this case.
Given the nature of these offenses, can you say what maximum or minimum penalties might be imposed if they're found guilty?
So there's statutory potential things that can be provided if you were to look in the criminal code, but that's up to the courts. We don't decide that.
You indicated in November that laying a charge under, is it section 174, was rare. I wonder, in your discussions with the Crown, did it ever come up just how rare? Would this be the first time in many years or some number of years that a charge like this has been laid either in Canada or BC?
It's section 176, sub 2. Not that it tremendously matters, but I don't know the answer. We didn't have that discussion. I think if you went to Statistic Canada, you probably get that. I would suggest to you it's pretty rare. I've never seen it personally.
How crucial was it? I mean, in both these instances, we saw someone videotaping the incident. How important was that, and how crucial is that in the investigation?
Well, I think like anything, if we were to talk about investigations in general, we know that eyewitness testimony in itself can have inherent discrepancies. And video obviously is tremendously valuable in an investigation. It's limiting in the quality of the video and what it depicts if there's audio and so forth. But in this case, it was pretty clear. And I would suggest to you it was significant to this investigation.
There have been a lot of protests over the last 2 years. And so what was it about these two incidents that, got to this point where they clearly crossed the line?
So I think as we've and I have said, I know as our OIC has said, we obviously support a person or group's rights to protest. And you'll have seen as what's occurred, obviously, most notably in Ottawa and places in Ontario and in Alberta, examples where people have been charged after substantive events have occurred. And there is latitude with respect to people's right to protest. That's a part of the fundamental rights that they have. It's a part of being in a free society such as Canada. And we have to weigh that balance. And so when I use the term crossing the line, in this particular case related to Remembrance Day, coming up and taking control of a mic as a part of a ceremony is an element of an offense in the criminal code. And I believe that that met those elements. So when we have something that is brought to our attention, however that may be, where we feel it meets the elements of an offense under the criminal code or sometimes other offenses such as motor vehicle act and so forth, we will investigate. In this case, to me it was clear, it warranted investigation. And I said back in November, we support whatever outcome that is, and the Crown, BC prosecution obviously felt that there was sufficient evidence to support a charge. Any other questions?
Are there any other charges being recommended in any of these similar anti-COVID protests stemming from Kelowna, or this is it?
So these are the two significant ones that we've have dealt with. We have laid or given a number of written tickets under the provincial statutes related to people who are protesting, primarily around organizers and so on. I know that the bylaw services with the City of Kelowna is also conducting their own investigation into this, and it's my understanding they may be looking at some bylaw tickets or fines related to this event. I would encourage you to speak with them with respect to that. But as of right now, I am happy to say, as much as others may disagree, most, if not all, or the vast majority of protests that have occurred related to COVID-19 in the City of Kelowna have been peaceful, and we're very grateful for that.
Are you anticipating any further, I guess, anti-COVID protests within the city now that most restrictions have been lifted?
I'm sure there will be.